I thought I'd do a quick video on the Annecy shootings. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Annecy. Would you just pronounce it Annonce in French? Annecy? Not sure. But anyway, also known as the French Alps shootings. The reason why I'm going to mention this one is because it's still a mystery and it's still unsolved. And this happened on the 5th of September 2012. So we're coming up nearly 10 years on this one. And that was when basically there was a British family of Iraqi origin who were on holiday in France, in very rural France, camping out not far from the Swiss border. And they were out to have a little walk in the forest, I guess. And they parked up a little lonely road near to the village of Cheveline. And they parked up in a little lay-by. And they were murdered. I'm just checking my notes here. So the ones that were killed, so that family, they're all in their family BMW, a British one that they'd driven over to France. And it was Saad Al-Hilli, who was 50, wife Iqbal, 47. The mother-in-law was there, Shahela Al-Alaf, 74, although I believe she was Iraqi as well. They're all Iraqi, kind of either Iraqi born or Iraqi origin. But she lived in Sweden. He had a Swedish passport. They were all gunned down. And there was also a passing French cyclist who lived very locally. His name was Sylvain Morier, and he was 45. But this is crucial to him. We need to note this, that the Al-Hillis had their two daughters, so that the parents and the mother-in-law were killed in the car. But there were two daughters. One of them, she was just 4 years old, and she was hidden underneath her mum's skirt in the car, and she survived. And also there was a slightly older daughter, 7 years old, and she actually was found outside the car. She had been shot in the shoulder, and she had been pistol whipped, so smashed with the butt of the gun. Now, it turned out that the gun used here in this attack was a P06 Luger, so an old weapon, a very reliable weapon, a really good semi-automatic pistol, but very old. And they reckon that something like 25 rounds have been fired in the attack. I'm not sure how many rounds real Luger holds. It's probably 10 and one in the chamber, something like that. So we're talking about having to reload several times or shove in another clip several times or whatever the killer did. The way the crime was discovered, and this kicked off, I gave you the date. It was about 4:45, so it's afternoon time. The way it was discovered, actually, it was a British cyclist who was a former RAF pilot, and he was cycling up the road, and they've reckoned that he arrived within a minute of this happening. And the police obviously thought, well, you're a damn good suspect. And the funny thing was, actually, after he discovered this, he checked the parents and realised they were dead. Didn't see the young 4-year-old, but the 7-year-old, he found her on the ground, perhaps unconscious. If he's a pilot, I imagine he has basic training in first aid. It's the report I heard is he put her into the recovery position. Now, you only do that if your patient is unconscious but breathing. So it could well be from the pistol whipping, she was actually knocked unconscious here. And he put her into the recovery position. But then he left because he didn't have any cell phone reception and began cycling down the hill. And he soon found a few French people, but although he lived in France, apparently his French wasn't great. And so he tried to say, can you call the police, can you call the police, and come with me? And they cycle up, just doesn't take very long, go back to this little parking spot off the road. And immediately the French dude who's there, I guess, with his family, who's, I believe his name was Pierre, good French name, assumes the British guy is the killer and apparently tries to punch him, So there's some kind of like international incident going on there. But eventually, it's realised that he's just a witness. Do I have the name of the English guy? Oh, let me just check a second. The English cyclist. No, can't find it. Oh, I can. Brett Martin, okay, ex-British RAF pilot, now resident of France. But anyway, he was interrogated thoroughly by the gendarmerie. Here's the interesting thing as well, that obviously the police came out to the area and cordoned it off and did all the investigations you would expect. They found touch DNA on the car, apparently. But then again, does that mean anything? Anyone could touch the bonnet of a car or wherever it was. I mean, it depends on where exactly it was found. So they have DNA, but that doesn't say an awful lot. They found all the shell casings. Those weren't collected, but then again, when you fire that many shots, you're not going to get them all, are you? And, one is as good as 25 in terms of casings. So, if they're flying all over the place, then, yeah. So eventually, after 8 hours, they finally find the 4-year-old girl who was cowering there in the car underneath her dead mother's skirts. So that was obviously, pretty traumatic. In terms of the investigation, the obvious way to go, we know that over 90% of murders, the victim and the killer are known to one another. There's a connection. This is why most murders are solved very fast. Whereas if you find somebody who is a stranger killer, or not find them, but someone is a stranger killer, if they randomly attack strangers, much, much harder to find. And obviously it's not like an area like this has CCTV coverage or automatic number plate recognition coverage like we have all over the place here in the UK. Big Brother is not watching you in Annecy. However, this Brett Martin dude, the cyclist, had seen, and I think the other family, that Pierre and his mates, coming up the road, they had seen a couple of interesting things. Because this way, assuming you're arriving and departing legally by car or motorcycle or whatever, there's only one road. Because as you carry on up, there's a barrier across the road, and then it goes into a kind of woodland track, which you can take a car along, but you're only able to do that if you're a forestry worker. So, we don't get this so much in the UK, do we? But if you're over in Germany or over in France, whatever, they have all these big woodland tracks, and they're doing coppicing. They're cutting down little bits of trees here and there and managing the forest sustainably and all that stuff. And you get, little cabins in the woods, and it's a very, very different to the UK because they have much more land space than we do. And people do take their cars up into these tracks. They do take motorbikes there, but they're not allowed to. There were reports earlier in the day of a family telling somebody they found, you're not allowed here, go away, kind of thing. It's only for forestry vehicles. So it's all very well saying, we have the single track, so we know the killer came up, did his dirty work, and then departed. Oh, I must mention it now. Sylvain Morier, the cyclist, was not just shot once. He was shot 7 times, including one right between the eyes. So it would appear that was an execution. As for the Al-Hilli family, the ones that were killed in their sort of browny, kind of purpley brown BMW, they did the worst thing you can do if someone's firing at you. Al-Hilli had put his car into reverse and was trying to reverse away from the gunman. Look, if any of us has the misfortune to be fired upon, the worst thing you can do is try and reverse, especially when it's into an embankment with trees. And his wheels were just spinning. I appreciate that he was obviously startled, he was taken by surprise, but that's the worst thing you can do. No, you stick it in forward, or first gear, second gear, whatever, put your foot down, get your head low, so you got the engine to protect you slightly, and drive straight for the gunman. Because if you look at previous examples of mass killings and all the rest of it, like the Hungerford Massacre, not far from where I live, loads of people reversed away from the gunman, and they got shot. Whereas if you're going towards them, you're a much harder target, you're closing distance much faster, and they have to go out your way or they get run down. Apparently when the police arrived even, or maybe not when the police arrived, but certainly when Brett Martin went over, the wheels were still spinning into the ground, even though the driver was dead. His foot was there pressed on the pedal, and it was still spinning. I'm not sure if he turned off the ignition at that point before he attended to the child, or quite how that went, or whether he just left it. But either way, I know that he made massive kind of tracks into that parking lot there, that kind of bit of tarmac, bit of dirt, bit of gravel, whatever it was, that parking lot. Because you could see them even after the police had left. You know, you could see exactly where the car had been. So the big question was, who did it? Why did they do it? And obviously, like we said, usually it's someone known to the family, and there's an obvious reason there. And of course, the prime suspect here is Zayed Al-Hilli, who is the brother of the victim, whose name I've suddenly forgotten. Saad Al-Hilli, the primary victim. So this is the brother. And the reason is that their father had made a fair bit of money, went over in Iraq before the revolution, had emigrated to England, and they had a £1 million house in somewhere near London, and they had a Spanish apartment worth a fair bit too, and another million, I believe, in a Swiss bank account. And there had been a dispute over the will. Initially, the father had said that Saad, the elder brother, could inherit the lot, because that's sort of the tradition that, you know, the first, so as not to break up the family wealth, to make sure the family stays strong. This is a tradition in many countries that to preserve the family wealth, all the inheritance goes to the firstborn, and then the others, well, if it's England, you know, they can go into the church, they can go into the military, do what they like, but the wealth stays with the eldest. But apparently at the last minute, well, I guess you don't know if it's the last minute, do you, if you're going to die up, but he had changed his will to say 50-50 between Syed and whatever his name was, I've forgotten it now. Zab, wasn't it? Anyway, so, and this was a matter of dispute, though, because the whole family lived in this London house, and then the brother wants his share, so he's trying to get Saab to sell it, and there's also this money in the Swiss account. And you know how it is, if you've ever dealt with solicitors, I mean, the solicitors will be happy to eat up all your money themselves before there's any resolution. I know this by bitter experience, that, you know, you think you've got a bit of money, and then by the time the divorce has gone through, you know, a third of it has gone to your solicitor, you know, because they just keep prolonging it and prolonging it and prolonging it. Unfortunately, very corrupt profession, in my opinion. Unlike pharmacy, where we just do whatever's best for the patient. Probably why so many pharmacies are closed down, but that's a digression. But anyway, so there was a dispute over the will, lots of money being shared, being bled, you know, being drained, and they looked very intently into this Saab. I must check I've got his damn name right. It's Saab, isn't it? Or Saab? Like the car, no. Doobie-doobie-doobie-doobie-doo, sorry. Yeah, Said. Maybe it's Z-A-I-D, whatever the hell you pronounce it. Zayed. I think I'll call him Zaid. Yeah, so Said was arrested, and he was extensively interrogated. But the problem was, they couldn't find any paper trail. They didn't think he'd done it. I mean, if you look at him, he looks like a little weasel with his glasses on, and you can't imagine him, you know, brandishing a Luger and blasting off, you know, 25 shots at people. You know. You can imagine him, though, weaseling around the back and paying a hitman. And how much does a hitman cost? You know, there was always incredulity about the the Tupac murder and the subsequent Biggie murder, that there was this contract for $1 million if you get Tupac and Suge. I'm not going to say who offered the $1 million, but let's just say his surname's Combs, and allegedly, and then but people laugh at that because in the ghetto, hey, you kill someone for a packet of crisps, a few quid, maybe $1,000, maybe $5,000. So it really depends on how much money you had. And so here we had a lot of money, potentially. And interestingly, this Zaid had allegedly tried to withdraw money from the frozen Swiss bank account. He tried to do it using again, this all allegedly, using a forged or fabricated or perhaps, post-dated, not post, an old copy of the will to say actually the money was his. And and it seems he had tried to withdraw money. Now that is suspicious, but then again, if you want your money and you need your money, it's not suspicious at all. It doesn't mean the money's for a murder. So, is it possible he paid a hitman? The police, obviously, with their digital forensics, have been into this in the minute detail and the way they can track these things. If there was withdrawal of any sizable amount, and you can imagine any hitman would know that this dude is playing for keeps, it's big stakes. You've got to have a decent amount of money withdrawn. We're talking thousands, if not tens of thousands, and so the police would have found that, and ultimately they might have been able to track that. Even if it was done via cash, you still have to withdraw. And how could he withdraw that vast amount of money if he doesn't have it? So it seems the police have exhaustively researched this. And Zaid has been on Panorama, did an interview with him, where he was asked all these questions, kind of ones I'm asking. And he's like, I didn't do it. I wouldn't have done this. You give me a lie detector test if you want. Now, well, that's bunkum, that's pseudoscience, so that's irrelevant. But the thing that isn't irrelevant is I'm presuming that Saeed, the father, had a will whereby his money is split between his kids. I don't know how the law stands if you die intestate, but I presume it's the same thing. Although this is complicated because it's not just English law, we're talking about Swiss law potentially, because there's all that money up there, and Spanish law. So, but I would have thought, right, if you're paying a hitman, you would be certain to kill them all. There's no point in killing the father and the mother and the mother-in-law, but then not kill the 7-year-old who's there in your vision. They say, oh, well, maybe he ran out of bullets at that point. I don't think so. This guy wasn't worried about how many bullets he expended. He must have had tons of them, because we don't know at what point Sylvain, I've forgotten his name now, the cyclist, Mollier, wasn't it? We don't know what time Sylvain Mollier disturbed them. What point of the assault? Was it the moment he started firing? Was it after he'd shot them? But either way, after you've gone that far, you've pumped bullets into the car, even if you've already killed the cyclist with all of those wasteful shots, would you leave a 7-year-old alive? You shot her clearly in the shoulder. That's not necessarily a fatal wound. You've pistol whipped her, but, would it not be easy? I don't want to be horrible, but it would be very easy to finish her off. As for the 4-year-old, I guess that you don't know about that, but again, if this was a contract killing, okay, you could have contracted a rubbish killer, but let's say you didn't, and you've contracted a decent killer. They know who's going to be there. They know who the family is. They know it's a 4-year-old, know it's a 7-year-old, and you've got to extirpate that root and branch, kill the lot of them, or you don't get all your money. You give them half before, half after, whatever. So even though Zaid is the obvious suspect, it's a mystery. It doesn't really add up, because you wouldn't leave a child there alive. And if you're a contract killer, you don't care if you've agreed to accept the contract. I mean, I suppose the only thing is it could have been that he just contracted to kill the father, if at all he is the brother. But then again, there's still be the paper trail. But you might contract just to kill him. But surely if it doesn't eliminate all your legal troubles, then I don't really see the point of doing it. And as for cyclists, why shoot him 7 times, including one between the eyes? Absolutely certain they killed him. Now, one of the theories going around, of course, this is Zaid's theory, that actually the Al-Hillis were just unlucky in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it was really Sylvain Monnier, the cyclist, who was the primary target. That's possible, but unlikely, because why would you ambush him right in front of a parking lot where there's another car with a family in it? Don't make any sense. Okay, take him out on this little winding road up through the hills, but do it somewhere surreptitious. You know, it's not hard to knock a dude that's not expecting him off their bike and then just get rid of him with one shot and then put away the casing. There's no forensics. So I think that's ridiculous. And this is part of one of the reasons why I'm still very suspicious of this Said dude, the brother, because he's coming out with saying it's, you know, you got to look into Sylvain Monnier, when clearly he was not the primary target. However, the recklessness and the craziness of this on a busy day with all these people coming, again, that says to me this is not a professional dude. You know, they were at a campsite in a tent. He could easily, if this was a contract killer, well, why not get a gun with a silencer and just dispatch them all when they're in their campsite at night and no one finds anything? You know, to do this at 3:45 in the afternoon in a busy place, in a parking lot up in the mountains, I actually think what's more probable, still I don't know, what's more probable is this was just a random act of crazy violence. As unlikely as that seems, that's what I think it could be. Someone who's had a horrible day and they feel like they're going to use their Luger rather than shooting targets. They're going to take out some people. The different options are, here we are, 18th of February 1914, I'm thinking about the First World War again, damn it, there wasn't even a war in February 2014. 48-year-old man arrested, had a ton of guns, rah-de-rah. He was an ex-policeman, which automatically raises him on my suspicion list, because I don't like or trust policemen by and large. But this dude was released on the basis of DNA, apparently. Well, that's ridiculous, because, you know, how do we know there's any DNA of the killer there? Before I just go into the other suspects. So there was this could be jumping around a bit in this video. In terms of what other witnesses saw, because it's a lone track, we're assuming that the killer went back down the road. But like I already said, it's a forestry trail. He could have snuck away through the forest, potentially. But then you're risking arrest by maybe forestry policemen, if there is such a thing in France. But if you're a local, I guess, you know, you'd be all right with that. Or you could be on a push bike, which you are allowed to ride through the forest. But in terms of cars, there was a motorbike that went down there, and apparently it was an unusual helmet that could open up at the side, this kind of thing. And this is weird, because the person didn't come forward, even though apparently, according to police, they're innocent. It wasn't until the police put a photo fit and a big description up. Here we are, so this crime happened in 2012. It wasn't until 2015 the motorcyclist came forward and said, actually, that was me. And it seems the police checked him out and exonerated him. However, that's very suspicious, because this was a local guy. He must have known about it, must have known he was around there. You know, it's like with me with the Joe Yates killing. I know I drove back up the Porter's Head Road, back from the M5, when the snow came down that night. And so there's a good chance, most likely I was past there before Tabak came out. But if I had looked at my clock and said, actually, No, I went past there when, we know the body was being carried. I'd have obviously gone forward to police and said, yeah, I saw this car or that car. I didn't see any cars, but I drove there. And they can eliminate me, can't they? Take a DNA swab once they got the body, confirm it's not my DNA on it. That's what any innocent people would do. You just want to help, and you want to be cleared. So this is weird that he didn't come forward. There was another car though, and again, this is eyewitness testimony. And before you know anything bad's gone down, your short-term memory doesn't get converted into long-term memory. So eyewitness testimony is absolute rubbish, but it's thought by an eyewitness or so that they saw a right-hand drive 4x4 looking vehicle going back down that road that would have had to have been up there around the time of the murders. And that is interesting because even if, let's say, it wasn't right-hand drive, they might just be saying that to try and say, well, no Frenchman could commit this crime, whatever. But a number of things. Yeah, we saw one bike and we saw one car. That's interesting because that person's not come forward. So that is possible that is the killer. In terms of we talked about lone wolf, crazy people. There's a dude called Patrice Mengaldo, and he was an ex-French foreign legionnaire. And this dude actually killed himself. Okay, hopefully I was triggered by me saying that. Call the Samaritans if you feel like doing it yourself. And he killed himself in June 2014. And this dude was thought to be a bit unhinged, have weapons, former soldier. Yeah. How'd you gather evidence against that? The problem is that despite doing lots of searches, the police have never found the gun. They got the casings, so they can easily match, lands and the grooves and the little lines, the bit where the pin hits the back of the cartridge and all this. They can match all this stuff up easily, but they've not been able to, despite all the searches they've done. Even Syed Al-Hilli was not innocent. Apparently, in his London house, he had a taser. I guess I better throw my one away if I didn't know they were illegal. Just a joke. But yeah. And there is another dude, Nordal Lalonde, 34-year-old ex-soldier. But this dude's a paedophile because he kidnapped and murdered an 8-year-old. So I discount him immediately because here he's murdered adults, and the child that he has in his clutches, he's actually let her live rather than kill her. If he, because I believe from previous reading that this dude had attended or snuck in to some kind of local French town hall party, and either by force or by deception, trick or whatever, he'd managed to sneak out this 8-year-old girl and done some awful things, and she died. That is a very different MO and totally different psychology or psychopathy to this crime, where the 7-year-old actually is allowed to live, whereas the adults are killed. So I discount that one immediately. So I guess the whole purpose of this one is it's an absolute mystery, and I'm stumped. I don't know why it was done. We've got an obvious motive with the brother, but to me it doesn't add up. You'd kill all of them and you'd see a money trail, and he's an obvious suspect, and if you listen to him, he is a nasty little weasel. He's not going to go to jail. I just don't see him. I don't see him going to, wanting to be in jail. He wouldn't do good in jail, the brother. Take a look at him. I don't see that he did it. Or if he did it, maybe I'd be interested to know if he actually got the money or whether it's gone to the kids. I've no idea. And of course, they're older now. You would think the 7-year-old who'd now be, old enough. Can they give any information? The problem is the 7-year-old was smashed over the head. And if you're concussed, I once fractured my skull and was badly concussed and everything else. I couldn't remember anything for a week before it happened. Okay, not a week, maybe like 3 days. Because the problem is when the brain's not working properly, you can't convert short-term memory which is really just neurotransmitters firing off, into long-term memory, which is permanent connections between nerves. And so she was shot in the shoulder, then she was hit over the head. Most likely, all of those events are a blur. She might remember a few days before. The 4-year-old might remember something. Now she'd be about 14. Would she have seen anything? And the other thing is, are they afraid to say if they've seen anything? Because if no one really knows who did it, then especially if you're a child, you're thinking, well, they might come back for me. I don't know. Interested for any thoughts in the comments, because it is the rare case where there is a murder that there are people around, middle of the day, tons of shots fired, obvious suspect, obvious motive, yet no arrests. And okay, I think the French police aren't the best in the way, not even finding the local motorcyclists for like 3 years because they didn't want to power. It's all about this. You release information to get information, and they should have put that out immediately, and then immediately they could have found him. Because if it was him, he'd have had a long time to saw that gun into small things, little small pieces, and melt it and burn it, and throw it in a river or something. You need to catch them fast, is what I'm saying. When you have that information, there's solid forensic evidence to pin it on them. You need to find that person and get straight to them. Anyway, interested for thoughts in the comments. Sorry for the bit of a break between videos. Sorry, this one, I don't have an answer. I really don't. But that's part of the fun of looking into these things, isn't it? Okay, all the best. Bye-bye.